I would say probably one of the best lessons I've got over the last few years is I was introduced to some folks that were interested in, as part of their succession planning and business continuity strategy, and selling their business. Well, I quickly realized that acquisitions were extremely complicated and a lot more expensive than I originally had anticipated. We were sitting on a really big pile of cash at the time. And what I realized was I wasn't willing to take, a large portion of my personal net worth, personally guarantee it, and go out and do acquisitions. I was willing to bet on myself, but I had to be thoughtful about and sensible about what I was embarking on, knowing that we didn't know what we didn't know. The bank that we had worked with for 30 years at the time was like, yeah, it's a little too risky for us. So I kind of took a pause and decided to go out and find a broker that could help me put a book together, a sim, that I could go out then and basically pitch the business to investors that would believe in the business and the model that we had built, show them the consistency and the performance that we were delivering, and the returns that we were generating in terms of cash flow, and get them aligned and bought into the vision and the direction we wanted to take the company. And in 2020, I was successful in doing that and partnered with a group called Argon Capital out of Atlanta, Georgia. And couldn't have asked for a better group to partner with. They were just as bought into our success as we were. Very people centric, very blue collar. And they were just a tremendous resource to us, both from a capital perspective and from I would say, an intellectual perspective, because they taught us a lot. They taught us a lot about our business, things that we didn't even know, and they taught us how to think about things differently.
What are some of those things you learned? Like I remember not knowing anything about anything, or as my dad would say, I didn't know nothing about nothing. What are some of those lessons you learned about kind of what's behind the curtain in that private equity world?
Well, the first thing was the lingo, right? We played word bingo every single day as a group. We didn't know what arbitrage or leverage or any of these other words were, but I would say they taught us to think differently. The difference between an investment and an expense. When you're an owner owner operator, you're smaller, you're entrepreneurial, you look at every dollar that you spend oftentimes as an expense. And they taught us the value of the return on the investment. I would say probably one of the best lessons I've got over the last few years is that discussion around leverage. I always took being debt free and having tons of cash as a badge of honor. And when I look back today, I'm going, if I would have maybe bet on myself a little bit more, would have spent a little more of that capital, made a few more strategic investments, who knows where it would have been. And I don't look back with any regrets, but they do a really nice job of looking at the business big picture. I still struggle as a leader of a much larger organization. We now cover 8 states and have 1,600 employees that we're really, really proud of. But I still get stuck in some of those entrepreneurial traps, you deal with some of the imposter syndrome that goes along with it. But I think at the end of the day, the one thing that they've taught me is just make a decision. Even if it's wrong, just make a decision. Don't overanalyze things, but be thoughtful about the decisions that you have to make, but bet on yourself, be confident, just fail fast, and you surround yourself with great people. So making the necessary investments in the business is critical.
I want to dig in a little bit on something you said. I hear, a story of a self-made man, built a business from nothing, had a really successful acquisition, brought in an investor, now have 1,600 employees. What the heck do you mean by imposter syndrome?
I feel bad for people that struggle with it because I do. When you're faced with the decisions that are going to impact 1,600 people, not 30 people anymore, it can be an overwhelming experience. So kind of mustering up, the courage and kind of allowing yourself to be vulnerable, reaching out for help. Those are the things that when I think about imposter syndrome that I personally struggle with. Not every day. Some decisions you can make really fast and you just, hopefully, if it's not the right decision, you fail fast. But the old adage, it can be lonely at the top, is very, very true. You bear a lot of responsibility as a leader of a much larger organization. And I take that really seriously.